Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
It was a regular Tuesday night. Nothing exciting had happened. No tension that I could feel. I was just in the kitchen, finishing up the last few dishes from dinner. She had cooked, which was rare these days, and I thought maybe we were turning a corner. She was in the living room scrolling through her phone, half watching something on the TV. I walked in with a slight smile, trying to feel normal in a house that hadn't felt warm in a long time. I asked if she wanted to watch something together. Just something light. Maybe a show we used to follow. She didn't look up. "Did you take the trash out like I told you?" she said, still tapping away. I paused. "No, not yet. I was doing the dishes first." She finally turned toward me, and her tone flipped without warning. "You always have some excuse. I asked you to take it out. If you can't even do that, maybe you should just sleep on the couch tonight." I stood there for a second, not angry, not shocked, just quiet. That tone, that habit of giving commands, wasn't new. But hearing it dressed up as an ultimatum hit differently. Do what I say or sleep on the couch. She didn't say it as a joke. There wasn't even a trace of sarcasm. It was cold, flat, like she was managing an employee who had stepped out of line. I set the towel down on the counter and looked at her. For once, really looked. Not at the woman I had married, but at the person sitting there, self-assured, unmoved, so used to being in charge that she didn't even consider how her words landed. I should have felt angry. Embarrassed. Something. But all I felt was done. "I think sleeping alone forever sounds better," I said. Then I walked to the bedroom, grabbed my pillow, and headed to the guest room. I didn't mutter under my breath. I closed the door and sat in silence. That night, I lay on the stiff mattress of the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long I had been playing along in a role I never agreed to. When did our marriage become this lopsided contract where she made the rules, and I just lived inside them? It wasn't about the trash or the couch. It was how she'd started treating decisions like orders, opinions like loss. And me? I was the guy who made sure the bills were paid and the cars stayed running. I thought back to how things used to be. When we first got married, we made decisions together. Every purchase, every plan, every night out, it was a team effort. We were equals. At least I thought we were. But slowly, the tone shifted. At first, it was subtle. She had suggestions. Then preferences. And eventually, if something didn't go exactly the way she liked, it turned into accusations that I didn't care. I wasn't trying hard enough. And I tried harder. Every time. If she criticized my clothes, I changed them. If she rolled her eyes at how I folded the laundry, I learned to do it her way. If she sighed during conversations, I paused to see what I had said wrong. I thought adapting meant loving, but it just taught her that I'd bend. So she kept pushing. And I kept accommodating. Until one day, she wasn't just adjusting the thermostat, she was adjusting me. Turning down my voice, dialing back my needs, and making the house comfortable only for herself. She used to call me kind. Now she called me passive. She used to ask what I wanted for dinner. Now she ordered for both of us when we went out, telling the waiter with a laugh, "He's easy." She used to say, "we." Now it was always, "I told you, I need, I want." But the couch comment? That wasn't just about that night. It was a snapshot of how she saw things now. Me as something to manage. Her as the one keeping score. I lay there, listening to the distant sounds of the TV she didn't pause, the clinking of her glass as she poured herself a refill, the light thud of her slippers as she went about her night, completely unaffected. It was strange how peaceful I felt. Not relieved. Just still. Like the static had finally cleared. She had probably expected me to argue, to push back, to beg for the bed, to apologize for not jumping fast enough. That was the usual pattern. But this time, something inside me had changed. I wasn't chasing approval. I was sleeping alone because I stopped playing. And I didn't plan on going back. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. No alarm. Just a strange kind of alertness that felt unfamiliar after months, maybe years, of dragging myself out of bed. I didn't check my phone. I got dressed quietly, gathered my things, and left for work without even walking past the master bedroom. She didn't text and call. By lunch, I had a feeling she was waiting to see if I'd be the one to break the silence. That used to be the pattern. An argument, a few hours of distance. Then I'd come around first, ask if she was okay, offer to talk, act like things just needed a little smoothing over. But this time, I didn't reach out. And by evening, when I came home, the house felt like it was holding its breath. The lights were off in the living room. Her purse was still on the kitchen island, so I knew she was home. I headed straight to the guest room, kicked off my shoes, and sat down on the edge of the bed. No part of me even considered knocking on our old bedroom door. 15 minutes passed before I heard footsteps in the hallway. Soft, hesitant. She paused outside the room, but didn't say anything. Eventually, I heard her sigh and walk away. That became the rhythm. Quiet mornings, separate spaces, barely a word exchanged. I didn't give her anything at all. No sarcasm, no retaliation, just absence. I handled my responsibilities. Took out the trash, paid the bills, kept the house in order. But I stopped showing up in the ways I used to. No more goodnight kisses. No more checking if she needed anything from the store. At first, she pretended not to notice. Made her own coffee. Sent out a few loud sighs around the house. Slammed a drawer or two like punctuation marks in a sentence she wasn't speaking out loud. It was performative irritation, like she wanted to provoke a reaction without admitting she needed one. I gave her nothing. What she didn't understand is that I hadn't shut down to make a point. I had finally reached a place where peace mattered more than winning. There was a calm in not chasing anymore. She tried baiting me once. Left a note on the kitchen counter asking if we could talk later. No specifics. Just that. I read it, nodded to myself, and folded it into the trash. She didn't mention it again. By day 5, she started talking more. Small, careful things. Did you see my charger anywhere? Are you using the car tomorrow? But her tone was different. Like she was testing the ice beneath her feet. I answered when it made sense. Politely. Directly. No emotion. She was no longer speaking to the version of me who tiptoed around her moods. That man had exited the stage the night she gave me a command instead of a choice. And now, the silence wasn't cold. It was just complete. One night, I came home a bit later than usual. Nothing interesting. Just grabbed a quiet dinner by myself after work. When I walked in, she was sitting on the couch, wearing the same old hoodie she always wore when she wanted to appear casual. The TV was on, but she wasn't watching it. "You're late," she said, without looking up. I didn't respond. She glanced over at me. "I made dinner." I nodded once. "I already ate." She stared at me for a long second, then looked away. "You didn't tell me." I walked past her, setting my keys on the counter. Didn't know I needed permission. Her silence that time was different. Not smug. Just caught off guard. That was the night she stopped pretending. The next morning, she made herself a full breakfast. Eggs, toast, even coffee with cream, and didn't offer me a thing. The plate clattered just loud enough on the table to register as a message. I looked over briefly, gave her a half smile, and went back to reading the news on my phone. She wanted me to be offended. I wasn't. See, she thought this was about power. About trading jabs until one of us surrendered. I had gone quiet because I no longer wanted chaos. 2 weeks earlier, I'd been a man carefully navigating every conversation, trying to avoid conflict. Now, I simply let things sit where they fell. If the laundry piled up, I didn't touch it. If she made plans without telling me, I didn't ask where she was going. She started dressing better around the house. Little things, lip gloss in the evening, changing out of pajamas by noon, walking past the guest room with purpose. It wasn't for comfort. It was her version of sending a flare. I saw it. She tried calling me babe one morning. Slipped it into a question like it was normal. I looked at her and said, "What do you need?" She blinked, caught herself, and mumbled, "Nothing." The silence between us wasn't thick with resentment. It was just still, like after a storm. When the wind stops and all that's left is the sound of your own breath. I didn't miss the way she used to demand things and expect me to thank her afterward. I had finally remembered what it felt like to be at peace in my own skin. And maybe that's what scared her. I was sleeping alone because I had found something I hadn't felt in years. Myself. By the start of the second week, the tone in the house had changed. It wasn't just that we weren't speaking much, that had become the new normal. What shifted was her energy. There was a tightness to her movements, a stiffness to her voice. The casual confidence she used to carry had been replaced with carefulness, like someone walking into a room they weren't sure they still had the key to. She tried to play it off at first, moved through her days like everything was still under control. She kept up appearances literally. Makeup in the morning, perfume in the evening, outfits chosen like she had somewhere to be. But she didn't go anywhere. She just stayed home, scrolling through her phone, glancing over her shoulder now and then to see if I was watching. I wasn't. She started making more noise in the kitchen, closing cabinets with a bit more force, letting the silverware clink louder than usual, sighing as she passed behind me. It was all theater, a performance meant to catch my attention without admitting she wanted it. And I gave her none of it. The nights were the quietest. After dinner, which we now ate in separate spaces, she would linger in the living room, scrolling endlessly, waiting for me to say something. Anything. But I had nothing left to offer. I had given years of effort, of patience, of bending in ways that slowly unraveled who I was. Now I sat in the silence she used to weaponize, and for once, it worked in my favor. She tried to reassert her position through routine. One morning, she left a list on the fridge, groceries, a reminder to pay a bill, a note about the dryer filter. I read it, nodded to myself, and walked out without acknowledging it. That evening, she brought it up. "Did you see my note?" I did. Her eyes searched mine. Well, what? You didn't say anything." I didn't know I needed to. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The same woman who once dictated the tempo of our life now couldn't even get a reply without asking for one. She shifted tactics after that. No more orders or passive reminders. Instead, she started using nostalgia as a tool. "I made your favorite, roast chicken, the one with the rosemary you like." I thanked her, sat down, ate in silence. When I finished, I washed my plate and walked away. She followed me to the hallway. "Did you like it?" "It was fine. That's it." I looked at her calmly. "What else would you like me to say?" She didn't answer. She thought that doing something nice would undo everything, that a meal could reverse years of condescension, indifference, and subtle control. But kindness isn't a currency you can spend only when the mood strikes. You can't withdraw affection after months of emotional distance and expect it to land the same way. I wasn't available anymore, and that scared her. A few days later, she tried involving me in plans again. "So, I was thinking we could go to that new place this weekend. The Tapas Bar. Remember, we talked about it last month?" I looked up from my book. "I made other plans." "With who?" "A friend." She blinked. "You didn't tell me." I shrugged. Didn't know I needed permission. It was the same line I had used before, and it landed just as heavily this time. But now, it was about establishing reality. She didn't get to be selectively married, expecting me to play the role of partner only when it suited her needs. The next morning, I found her sitting at the edge of the bed in the master bedroom, holding one of my hoodies. The shift in power wasn't loud. It didn't come with shouting or ultimatums. It arrived quietly, in the form of boundaries. She wasn't used to this version of me, the version that didn't ask for her approval or adjust to her moods. I started waking up earlier, going for long walks before work, staying out a bit later. I wasn't seeing anyone. I was just living. And every time I walked in the door and she looked up from whatever she was pretending to focus on, I could feel her trying to read my face, trying to figure out what I was thinking. One night, she tried again, this time softer. "Hey," she said as I passed by the hallway. "I was thinking, maybe we could talk tonight?" I paused, looked at her. "Talk about what?" She hesitated. "Us. I feel like we've been off." "We have. Don't you think we should talk about that?" I held her gaze for a moment, then said, "When you told me to sleep on the couch, you made it clear how you saw me. I just finally started seeing myself the same way." She took a breath like she was going to protest, but the words never came. I walked into the guest room, closed the door, and for the first time since the shift began, I felt something new from her. She looked afraid, because she finally realized she was no longer the one calling the shots. And the worst part for her? She had no idea what came next. The silence had grown into something she couldn't ignore anymore. It wasn't just quiet, it was unfamiliar. And that, I think, is what unsettled her the most. The man she used to predict down to the hour, the routine she once shaped around her own moods, no longer responded the way she expected. Nothing landed. Her old ways of signaling, subtle guilt trips, icy pauses, that practiced air of disappointment, none of it stirred anything in me anymore. She tried her best to carry on like things were fine. Forced casual smiles, asked rhetorical questions that didn't need answers, even started laughing a little too hard at her phone when I walked past. But the cracks showed. Her voice trembled more often. Her hands stayed busy with nothing. She lingered in rooms she used to breeze through. The tipping point didn't come with a bang. It crept in one night, quiet and unsure. I'd come home from a walk, something I'd been doing more often just to clear my head. I came through the front door, set my keys down like always, and she was there, standing by the counter in the kitchen, holding a plate. "I made lasagna," she said. I nodded. "Smells good." Her eyes flicked toward mine. "You want to eat together?" I looked at her for a second, then gently shook my head. "I'm not hungry." She blinked fast, like she hadn't expected that answer. You said it smells good. I did. She opened her mouth to say something else, but nothing came out. I walked past her and into the guest room, closed the door behind me. Later that night, there was a knock. Soft. Another knock followed. Then her voice, quiet. Can we talk? I stood up, opened the door just enough to see her face. She looked tired. What do you want to talk about? I asked. She hesitated. Us. I stepped aside. Let her walk in. She sat at the edge of the bed, hands folded in her lap like a student unsure of the teacher. I know things haven't been good, she said, barely above a whisper. I didn't respond. I didn't mean what I said. About the couch. I was frustrated. I didn't think it would. Go like this. Go like what? She looked up, surprised by the firmness in my tone. This, she said, gesturing at the space between us. I didn't think we'd stop talking. I exhaled slowly. We didn't stop talking. I just stopped begging. She winced, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't have a counterpoint ready. I thought giving you space would help, she said. No, I replied, calm but clear. You didn't give me space. You gave me a command. And when I didn't follow it, you realized you'd lost something. Her eyes welled up. I watched her struggle to maintain composure because she didn't expect to be the one asking for forgiveness. I miss you, she finally said. I nodded. I figured you might. Eventually. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was honest. For once, there were no pretenses between us. No carefully curated responses or attempts to shift blame or reframe the past. I thought you'd come around, she admitted. You always do. Not this time. Why? I looked at her, not with anger or bitterness, but with the kind of detachment that only comes after a long, quiet realization. Because I finally understand what peace feels like, I said. And I'm not willing to trade it just to make someone else feel comfortable again. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, pressing her palms together like she was trying to pray her way into the version of me she used to control. I didn't know it had gotten this far. It didn't get this far, I said. You pushed it here. She looked up sharply. You used to treat every disagreement like a test I had to pass. Every request like an order. Every mistake I made like a character flaw. And you called it love. But it was control. And I kept thinking if I just worked harder, adjusted more, gave more, you'd meet me halfway. You never did. I didn't realize. You didn't care to. Those words landed. Her face crumpled for a second, and then she quickly tried to put herself back together. But I'm here now, she said. Trying. I nodded. And I'm listening. But trying doesn't erase patterns. She stood, walking toward the door, then paused. Are you saying there's no hope? I shook my head. I'm saying it's not on me to give you all the answers anymore. For once, she accepted that. She left the room quietly. No parting shot. That night, I didn't sleep much. Because for the first time, I knew she had felt the shift. Not just the absence of warmth, but the absence of control. The life she once arranged around her dominance no longer revolved on her terms. And maybe now she realized. It's easier to throw your weight around when the other person is still lifting with you. But once they stop, you're left holding your own weight. And it gets heavy fast. A few more days passed, and the weight of it all seemed to settle into her posture. She moved slower around the house. The sharpness in her voice had softened because she didn't know what to say anymore. She had spent years speaking from a place of assumed permanence. Like no matter how far she pushed, I'd always stay tethered. But something had shifted, and not just in the way we communicated. It was in the way I showed up in the space we shared. I was no longer asking to be seen. I simply existed on my own terms. She tried one last time on a Thursday evening. I was sitting out back, reading, enjoying the quiet. She walked out with 2 glasses of wine. Set one down next to me. I know we're not in the same place, she began, but I was hoping we could at least talk. I closed the book slowly, not irritated, just thoughtful. What exactly do you want to talk about? She took a seat beside me, not too close, and looked straight ahead instead of at me. That was new. There was no attempt at charm. Just silence, then the truth. I don't know who I became, she said. I was angry a lot, and I didn't even know why half the time. Somewhere along the line, I started treating you like you owed me everything. I stayed quiet. Let her sit with her own words. You were good to me, she said. Too good. And instead of appreciating it, I took it for granted. I think I thought it was normal, having someone show up, pick up the slack, give without keeping score. I didn't see it as love. I saw it as expected. She finally looked over at me. I was wrong. It didn't hit me like I thought it would. I just felt calm. I'm not angry anymore, I told her. But I'm not the same either. She nodded. I know. I spent a lot of time thinking I was the problem, I continued. That if I just figured out the right way to say something, the right moment to bring things up, the right approach, you'd respond differently. But I realized it wasn't about my timing. It was about your walls. She didn't argue. You kept moving the goalpost. One day it was about the dishes, the next it was the tone of my voice. Then it was how I wasn't assertive enough. But when I finally spoke up, it became too confrontational. I couldn't win because it was never about partnership. It was about control. I didn't mean for it to become that, she whispered. Maybe not. But it did. We sat there for a while in the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. The kind that says more than apologies can. I want to fix this, she said eventually. I looked at her, then down at the glass she had brought me. I hadn't touched it. I believe you, I replied. But I don't think you understand what that means yet. She tilted her head slightly. Fixing this doesn't mean we go back to normal, I said. It means tearing everything down to the studs and deciding if we're even the same people anymore. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. I want to try, she said again, steadier this time. Then start by learning how to respect someone without needing to control them, I said. Start by letting go of the version of me that existed just to keep you calm. She nodded, slowly, and stood up. I'll give you space. I don't need space, I said, finally taking a sip from the glass. I need honesty. I need effort. And I need you to stop assuming I'll always be here just because I've always been here. She walked back inside without saying another word. That night, I didn't go to the guest room. I stayed outside long after the sun dipped below the horizon, letting the quiet fill me. I thought about everything, how far we'd come, and how silence had become more informative than words ever were. She believed I'd always choose peace at the cost of my own voice. That was her miscalculation. What she hadn't counted on was that real peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from not needing someone else's approval to feel whole. 2 weeks after she issued that command, do what I say or sleep on the couch, she was sitting in the quiet of a house that used to orbit around her moods, now asking for the very connection she once weaponized. She was asking just to be heard. And I finally understood the difference between keeping a marriage intact and keeping yourself intact. I was just done walking in circles.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.